Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the dim, winding alleys of Edo period Japan. It's dark, humid, and the air carries a ripe scent that tells you exactly what kind of job you're about to do. You're a night soil collector. Yes, exactly what it sounds like, and your shift starts long before the sun even considers rising. The wooden houses loom over you like silent sentinels. The neat alleys seem to breathe, whispering with the weight of a city still sleeping. You're alone, except for the creak of your cart's wheels and the gentle slosh of what's already inside the pails. Shadows stretch long, and the only light comes from a fading lantern hung crooked on a post. Insects buzz lazily near your ears. Your nose twitches, but you're used to that by now. You probably won't survive this job. Not because it's dangerous in the usual sense, but because the sheer sensory overload might convince your soul to eject early. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it there right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You exhale slowly, the way you always do before you begin. A breath to accept your place in the world. A breath to forgive the job you've chosen, or maybe the job that's chosen you. Around you, the narrow wooden walkways hover just above shallow ditches. Every step must be careful. One slip, and you're not just losing your balance, you're losing your dignity. The city of Edo, what we now call Tokyo, pulses with quiet energy even at this hour. Over 1 million people live here now, packed into districts like folded origami. If for every household, every tea house, every bustling brothel or silent shrine, there is a chamber pot. And chamber pots, like secrets, don't empty themselves. Your job is part ritual, part endurance sport. The wooden yoke across your shoulders digs into the skin. The pails on either side swing with each step, liquid shifting inside like a disagreeable soup. You learned long ago how to walk without spilling, an awkward, slightly hunched stride that feels more like a dance than a march. Po ballet, if you will. Historians still argue whether Edo's night soil system was a brilliant form of urban sustainability or just a way to keep poor folks too exhausted to revolt. Either way it worked. The city was clean. Cleaner than most European cities of the time, if you can believe it. And it was you, your aching back, your meticulous timing, your nose of steel, that kept it so. You reach your first house, a quiet merchant home with a polished wooden gate and a tiny bell that jingles as you unlatch it. The family leaves out their night soil in a sealed bucket, painted with their name in bold brushstrokes. It's heavy. The family must have had a lot of miso soup last night. The cat watches you from the roof's edge, tail twitching. You nod at it. The cat blinks slowly. Neither of you are surprised to see the other. Once the bucket's emptied into your pail and scrubbed quickly with well water, you leave a small wooden token, a marker of service completed. Later, the family will leave payment based on the token count. It's a quiet honor system that mostly works. Mostly. Walking again, you glance up. The stars are starting to fade. A soft gray light seeps into the sky. You can smell damp tatami mats and morning rice start to cook somewhere. Steam rises from a chimney. The scent mingles strangely with your own cargo. Funny, isn't it, how the mind adapts? You don't notice the smell as much anymore. Or maybe you do, but it's become part of the city's heartbeat. A scent with a purpose. A sign that someone is doing the work that no one wants to talk about. Once, a samurai passed you in the street and didn't look away fast enough. You met eyes for half a second. Just half. But it was long enough to register the flicker of discomfort on his face. Not disgust. Not pity. Just the awareness that your world was very different from his. Still, someone has to do this. The waste doesn't vanish on its own. You keep walking. There's a stream that cuts behind the next row of houses. Shallow and lined with smooth stones. You follow its bank, stepping over sleeping frogs and avoiding patches of slick moss. Your lantern sways softly. The night's breath cools the sweat on your back. One time, years ago, You found a child's doll discarded in the waste canal. Its face was hand-painted, its eyes still wide open. You cleaned it, then left on a shrine. Sometimes, you wonder if the spirit world noticed. You reach the back gate of a tea house. They're generous tippers. But the bucket here is taller than the others. Heavier, too. You grunt softly as you lift it, pouring carefully into your pail, not a single drop spilled. Your arms shake a little. You haven't eaten yet, and your stomach is starting to notice. Above you, a paper screen slides gently. A woman's silhouette passes behind it. She hummed a lullaby, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned that you're there. You pause for just a moment to listen. The sound wraps around you like steam from baths. Then, like always, you move on. Another block, another house, another pail. You lose track of the number, but the rhythm settles into your bones. Lift, kafi, pull, tuken. Again and again. Like the city itself is breathing for your work. And still, the sun waits just beyond the edge of the rooftops, biding its time. Like it respects the job enough not to interfere. Not yet. You pause under a narrow awning, just wide enough to stretch your back. The pails swing low, nearly brushing the edge of the walkway. There's a fine art to this balance. The way you let the weight pull gently on your shoulders. The way you turn corners with just enough lean to keep everything contained and not splashing where it shouldn't. And you've learned the sounds, too. The faint shift of liquid inside the wood. The creak of your yoke. Even the slight tug of the ropes tightening as you walk. It's like your body has become another kind of cart, built for burden. Sometimes, you wonder if your bones will keep this shape even after you put down the buckets for good. The alley turns sharply left. You know this bend. You've walked it in rain, in frost, even once during a festival night when the streets were slick with sake and stray sandals. You once slipped here just slightly, just enough to know you never want to repeat that feeling. Since then, you've learned how to read the wood grain in the boards beneath your feet, how to feel for rot and listen for soft give. Not all the danger in your job is visible. You hoist your pails and step forward, careful as ever. The historians still argue whether the precise design of Edo's elevated wooden walkways was a deliberate sanitation effort or simply a practical reaction to monsoon flooding. Either way, they're your lifeline. You trust the boards more than most people. It's not a glamorous routine, but there's something meditative about it. You know every twist and wobble in your route, every door that creaks too loud, every dog that barks at the exact wrong moment. Even the families you serve follow a rhythm. The old couple in the corner always leave out sweet bean cakes on Thursdays. The bachelor 3 houses down hasn't paid his collection fee in 2 weeks. Again, you consider raising prices for selective memory. But then again, you're not in this for the glamour. You reach the merchant's district now. Fancier houses, decorative lattice work on the upper floors, courtyards with pebbled paths, and the smell of pine. These homes produce more waste, both because of the size of their households and, perhaps, because wealth has a way of encouraging indulgence. But they also paid better. You kneel beside a large, lacquer container. Its lid is neatly tied. A servant boy meets you with a candle in hand. He doesn't speak. He just watches, silent and sleepy-eyed, while you do your job. You wonder if he knows what this bucket holds, or if he's simply told not to ask. When the pail is empty and scrubbed, he hands you a small coin. Bonus, maybe, or hush money. Either way, you accept it with a small bow. Further down, you pass under a hanging lantern, still glowing faintly in the blue hour before dawn. The city feels suspended, like it's forgotten to wake up. That's when you smell it. Not the usual aroma of your trade, but something else, burned rice. You turn your head, eyes scanning the rooftops, and then you see it, a wisp of smoke curling from second-story window. Not enough to panic, just enough to wrinkle your nose. You pass it without comment. You've seen worse. Once, you arrived at a house where the waste bucket had been forgotten for 3 full days. You won't describe the result. You still dream about it sometimes. There are tales among your peers. True? Maybe. Maybe not. Like the story of the man who dropped his sandal in a full pail, then fished it out with his bare hand. They say he swore he felt his soul leave his body for a minute. When he died years later, they buried him with 2 sandals anyway, just in case. You reach a small bridge now. Not a real bridge. More a set of flat boards laid across a gap where 2 alleys meet. You always pause here, not for the view, which is mostly rooftops and washing lines, but because you can feel the breeze shift ever so slightly. It carries the scent of something good, steamed fish, maybe, or roasted barley tea. Someone's early breakfast. You smile. That's a thing no one understands unless they've walked these alleys. It's not all bad. Sure, the job smells. Sure, your clothes never quite come clean. But in the stillness of morning, when the streets belong to you and only you, there's peace. A rare sword. Burned. A cat darts across your path. Same one as earlier? Maybe. Or maybe they all just look the same in the dark. Fluid, silent, then vaguely judgmental. You think of the farmers who will take this waste, then turn it into green rice shoots. There's a quiet pride in that. Your work feeds the land. Literally. The city consumes, and you deliver its remains to where they become sustenance again. It's a closed loop. Unspoken. Uncelebrated it. But it works. They say Edo's waste system was one of the most efficient of its time. Foreign visitors often remarked on how clean the city was. They never mentioned how much of that cleanliness rode on shoulders like yours. Or how often you had to scrub out splinters from those wooden pails. You feel a drop on your head. Zen? No. Just do from a rooftop above. Still, it reminds you, time's moving. The sky's turning lighter. The final house on this block is always tricky. The collection point is inside a narrow corner, where your pail barely fits. You have to twist your body, duck low, and hold your breath. Not because of a smell, but because the corner's so tight your nose brushes the wall. You thought of quitting. Everyone does. But then you remember the pay. Not great, but steady. Then the rhythm. Not glamorous, but grounding. The pail is full again. You shift your weight. The wooden yoke settles once more into its groove across your shoulders. You take a step, then another. And so the dance continues. By now, the first soft clatter of shutters echoes across the alleyways. Someone is waking early. The kettle hisses faintly behind a sliding door, and you catch the whisper of 2 voices, still groggy, probably debating who gets up to light the fire. You keep walking. Your job started in darkness, but it doesn't end when the sun shows up. Ahead, the homes get taller. Wooden frames built with sharper angles. Tiled rooftops glistening from last night's humidity. These are samurai houses, sturdier, older, and a little more guarded. They rarely leave their buckets exposed. Here, you knock softly on the wooden frame of the service entrance, then wait. A sliding door creaks. A house attendant, older than you, nods without words and motions you toward the rear garden. You pass stone lanterns, a mossy koi pond, then a small grove of bamboo, swaying in rhythm with the breeze. It's quiet here. The smell still lingers, but fainter somehow. Like even the waste of the upper class has learned to be subtle. The collection bucket sits at the edge of the garden, carefully covered with a cloth. It's heavy, but you expect that. It's always the big houses that try to hold out longer between pickups. You lift the lid. A beetle scuttles away. You stop flinching. As you begin to transfer the contents into your pail, you wonder what the samurai behind the walls think of you. You're invisible in their world, yet entirely essential. Without you, their koi pond wouldn't sparkle. Their bamboo wouldn't grow. Their quiet garden moments would have a very different aroma. Historians still argue whether the exchange of night soil between city and countryside truly benefited the samurai class, or if it primarily enriched the farmers and merchants. Either way, you've noticed they always pretend not to know your name, but they never forget to pay. You finish your work with clean, practiced movements. The attendant returns with a cloth-wrapped bundle, rice balls, and pickled radish. A silent thanks, or maybe hush food. Either way, it smells better than what you're carrying. You bow, they bow, and you leave without a word. As you turn the corner toward the merchant district again, you pass a row of tea houses just beginning to stir. Curtains flutter in the breeze. Someone plays a shamisen in the distance, soft, slow notes, not for performance but for practice. A woman in a pale robe sweeps her doorstep with one hand and sips tea with the other. She sees you. You see her. There's no shame, only recognition. There's a strange comfort in this daily anonymity. You move through the city like a shadow. You know everyone's secrets, but they never know yours. Like how you once collected from the magistrate's quarters during a cholera scare, wearing a scented cloth over your nose because the smell of fear was sharper than the waste itself. You chuckle softly to yourself. Some say the wealthier households in Edo prized the waste you carried, that it was richer, nutrient-dense thanks to their very diet. In fact, the best fertilizer contracts weren't with the biggest houses, but with the ones who ate the most fish and miso and drank the strongest sake. You once overheard a landlord bragging about how his night soil fetched twice the market rate, as if that were something to write on a family crest. You stop at a home near the canal, bigger than most, with stone lanterns flanking the gate. This one you dread, not because of the waste, but because of the gatekeeper. He's a sharp-eyed man with too much time and too little respect. He watches you like you're trying to steal something that no one in their right mind would ever want. He makes you wait. Always. Today is no different. You knock, wait, and tap your foot. Paul, he calls. His voice is thin and nasal, like a flute with one broken hole. You wait. When a gate finally creaks open, he tosses the bucket at your feet. It slashes ominously. You breathe through your mouth and get to work. As you finish, he says, "You missed a spot last time." You didn't. You don't answer. You simply bow, low and slow, the kind of bow that says, "I'm doing this for me, not for you." Then turn to leave. Sometimes, dignity is heavier than the pails you carry, but the payoff is worth it. This household pays on time, and in coin, not just tokens. You tuck the pouch into your sleeve. You pass a pair of children chasing a paper ball. One nearly bumps into your pails and stops dead, nose wrinkling. "Ew," he says. His sister pulls him back. "That's fertilizer," she says wisely. "Papa says it makes the daikon spicy." You smile. Kids always get it before adults do. Back in the shade of storage shed, you rest a moment. The pails are getting full again. You'll need to make a run to the transfer station soon. But not yet. One more house first. You follow a narrow side path where the buildings lean inward like whispering neighbors. Here, the back doors are crooked, the paint is peeling, and the waste is, well, let's say more aromatic. But the tenants smile. They nod. One even hands you a plum. "It's sweet," she says, "and you earned it." You bite into it on the spot. She's right. It is sweet. And for a moment, with juice on your chin and sunlight warming your back, you forget what you're carrying. You're just someone moving through the morning. Someone who belongs. The narrowest alleys hold the loudest whispers. Your route twists into the back veins of a city now, where the wooden walls are close enough to touch with both elbows at once. Then every footstep echoes a little louder than it should. Here, the homes are smaller, thinner. The doors warp in the rain and never quite close right. The people behind them speak in half-hushed tones, not because they're hiding, just because everything here has learned to speak softly. This is your favorite part of the route. You tip your lantern slightly to avoid the low beam you always forget about. Then, without knocking, you unlatch a familiar back door and duck inside. It's not really inside exactly, just a lean-to of planks shielding a simple squat pot from the wind. It's barely dignified, but it holds everything it needs to. The pot is half full, enough to make you wince. But you've done worse. The real reason you come here first is because of what you might overhear. Voices drift through the paper-thin wall. The wife is scolding her husband for spending money at the gambling house again. He's defending himself, poorly. You can hear the creak of the mat beneath his knees as he bows, apologizing. It's not the first time. You pour and scrub, all while keeping perfectly quiet. Like a ghost. Like the house itself. Historians still argue whether night soil collectors intentionally designed their routes to maximize eavesdropping, or if it was simply a natural consequence of their work. But between you and the night air, you know it was both. You've heard confessions whispered through floorboards, spotted secret rendezvous through thin latticed windows. Once, you even witnessed a family reciting lines from a kabuki play in the kitchen, rehearsing in low, reverent tones. The city lives in layers. The upper ones get the daylight. The lower ones, your alleys, your corners, get the truth. You step over a broken tile, then duck back into the open. On the next street, you pass an elderly woman sweeping her doorstep. She nods as you go by. You nod back. She doesn't offer conversation, only a quiet acknowledgement that your path is necessary. People like her don't pretend you're invisible. They just treat you like a season, something that comes and goes whether you like it or not. A little further on, you pause. You can't help it. A window is open. There's soft weeping from inside. Just a few breaths of sorrow before someone shushes it with a lullaby. You recognize the tune. Everyone does. It's the one mother's hum when rice is scarce and sleep is the only comfort left. You tighten your grip on the wooden yoke. It creaks faintly. The moment passes. Funny, isn't it? You spend your days elbow deep in what most people would rather forget. But what you carry is the most human thing of all. What goes in must come out. What grows must return. Even sorrow, sometimes, has to be carried away. You stop by the wall of an old tenement, its roof sagging like tired shoulders, then place a small token on the doorframe. They're behind on payment, but you'll come back. You always do. A loose chicken struts past your feet. No one seems to own it, or maybe everyone does. Your next stop is the baker's family. You like them. Their ways smells slightly of toasted barley in yesterday's buns. They have 2 sons, both grown now, and a dog that still barks at you every single time. You swear it remembers your scent, but pretends not to. Today, though, the gate is ajar. That's unusual. You peek in. The waste bucket is still there, half full and covered. But something feels different. And then you hear it, whispers again. Not family ones this time. Neighbors. He collapsed during the fire drill. They say he's been sick for days, but didn't want to stop baking. Prideful. No doctor. Couldn't afford it. You keep your head down. You do your job, but your mind drifts. Illness moves through alleys like wind. Quiet, fast, and not always fair. You wonder if the city will ever have a real hospital. One that doesn't turn away people who smell like your job. You finish quickly and leave a second token. Your own kind of prayer. Back in the sun, the alley stretches ahead. There's an old shrine at the end of it, barely taller than your waist. You bow slightly as you pass. Not out of superstition, but habit. Once, years ago, someone left an offering there for the spirits of waste. A handful of rice and a folded strap of silk. You remember smiling for the first time that week. You duck beneath a laundry line and nearly brush someone's underoar with your head. A bird sings overhead, ridiculously cheerful for someone who doesn't have to carry buckets. You reach another house with a warped gate. You knock. An old man answers, missing 2 teeth and wearing 1 sandal. He grins like he's known you in another life. Maybe he has. Still carting the city's guts around, he says. You nod. Still living in them. He laughs. Well, they say you can't farm flowers without getting your hands dirty. You take his bucket. It's lighter than most. He eats simple meals. Rice and pickles. Sometimes just tea. Payment next week, he mutters. Maybe. You believe him. Maybe. You're almost done with this loop. Just 3 more stops before you unload. Your legs are starting to ache. Your fingers cramp slightly on the yoke. You shift the pails, feeling their weight sway. And still, the alley pulls you forward. Some jobs make you feel invisible. Yours makes you feel like the city itself. Messy, unspoken, but holding everything up from beneath. The city opens up a little now. You've left the tight back alleys behind and reached the edge where buildings breathe wider apart, like lungs exhaling after a long, clenched night. These are the city's outskirts, where gardens take root and streets slope gently toward the rice paddies that shimmer just beyond the final rooftops. You pause at the last gate, the final house before the world turns green. The pail is waiting right on time, covered neatly as always. The family here doesn't speak much, but they never forget the details. They tie the lids with plum color cord. They scrub their container before you even arrive. It's the little things. As you empty the contents into your already brimming pails, you glance toward the distant fields. Mist curls lazily along the surface of the paddies, and a flock of egrets stands knee-deep in the shallows, white against the muted green. Somewhere out there, the waste you've collected will become something beautiful. It's hard to believe, sometimes. Historians still argue whether the barter system of Edo's night soil economy created more class friction or simply forced cooperation between people who would never share a meal. But you've seen it firsthand, the subtle reverence of farmers for what the city throws away, and the quiet pride in returning with coin earned not from wealth, but from necessity. You take the cart path now, rougher ground but wider. No more footbridges, just gravel and packed earth. Your sandals crunch softly. A few early sparrows hop ahead of you, pecking at crumbs invisible to anyone else. By now your shoulders drop. The yoke presses deep into your collarbone, and your fingers have that numb tingle you've come to accept as part of the trade. You shift the pails slightly to redistribute the weight. One bump too many, and you'll repaint your feet in something best left undescribed. You crest a small rise, and there they are, the farmers. 3 of them, waiting at the edge of a tidy plot. Wide conical hats, rolled up sleeves. One is already carrying a ladle. They're smiling. You don't get smiles in a merchant quarter. You don't get them behind paper screens. But here they greet you like a missing ingredient. You lower the yoke with a deep grunt. The release is almost musical. The pails leave dark, wet rings in the dirt as you lift their lids. The men nod, approvingly. Not a single spill. Clean edges. Even distribution. You'd be insulted if they didn't notice. They offer you barley tea. It's warm and bitter and cuts through the smell, still clinging to your sleeves. You drink slowly, savoring the heat against your palms. Came early today, one says. You nod. Felt lighter. He laughs. Not from my end. There's a small shack nearby where you can rinse the buckets. Not fully, just enough to keep the worst from fermenting. You splash water over the wood, scrubbing with a brittle brush while the farmers begin their work. You don't watch too closely, but you catch glimpses. Buckets sloshing into shallow trenches between rows of young shoots. The liquid absorbed in a soil that will one day yield bowls of polished white rice. You've eaten that rice. It tastes like home. There's a saying, the cleanest harvest grows from the foulest hands. You've never heard it spoken out loud, but you've lived its truth. You help them for a while. Just a few motions, more symbolic than necessary. You stir a trench, adjust a fence post, accept a bite of salted daikon in exchange. The conversation drifts to weather. Always weather. Rainfall, wind, sunspots. The cycle that governs everything. One man swears the moon has been too bright lately and is stealing moisture from the soil. Another says it's just the ghosts of bad harvests watching too closely. You don't argue. You just listen. Then, as the sun climbs a little higher, you prepare to head back. Empty buckets. Lighter shoulders. A small coin pouch in your sleeve. The return journey always feels shorter, though your legs disagree. The farmers bow as you leave. Not deep, not dramatic. Just enough to say, this matters. You step back onto the path. Behind you, the paddies glisten like shallow mirrors. Ahead, the rooftops of Edo shimmer faintly in the early heat. You pass a roadside shrine. A stone fox watches with sharp eyes. You leave a pebble on its base like always. Just in case. There's a moment, just one, as you walk the hill where the breeze shifts and you catch the scent of morning rice being steamed somewhere upwind. It mixes, oddly, with the lingering traces in your pails. You sigh. 2 sides of the same story. You reach the edge of a city again, where children begin to stir and doors start sliding open. Someone calls to a neighbor. The caged bird chirps. Laundry appears on a line, like slow-moving ghosts. You're just another shape moving between them. Unseen, maybe, but not unneeded. You're back in the heart of the city now, this time near the canals. The alleys here feel different, damp in a way that never quite dries. The air hums with flies, and even the wood beneath your feet seems a little more reluctant to bear your weight. These are the streets where waste flows in more ways than one. You adjust the yoke on your shoulders. The buckets are lighter now, emptied out in the fields, but the memory of their weight still lingers, like a psalm stuck in your spine. The canal winds along the left, murky and sluggish. Its surface glints with patches of oil and floating fragments of bamboo, paper, and things better left unnamed. The banks are lined with crooked buildings, tilted just slightly toward the water, as if leaning in to confess something they shouldn't. You take the narrower path. It hugs the edge of the canal like a tightrope. On your right, the buildings press in close, so close you can hear someone slurping noodles behind the wall. On your left, just a breath of space before the water laps up against mossy stone. Your foot slips, only slightly, and your heart does a little leap. That was close. Too close. You grip the yoke tighter. You've never fallen in, but you've seen someone who did. The smell clung to him for days. His wife made him sleep outside. Historians still argue whether Edo's network of canals was built more for waste management or for transportation. Either way, you suspect the answer is yes, because nothing in the city has just one job. You reach a small overhang where waste from a tea house sometimes trickles through an open chute. Today it's dry. Good. You duck under, careful not to brush the wood. Last time you did, something brown and squishy fell into your sleeve. Further along, you spot a strange shape floating just beneath the water surface. It bobs, spins slowly, then catches against a reed. You step closer. It's a sandal. Just one, worn and waterlogged. You stare at it for a moment longer than you should. Then you remember the story of the man who lost his soul to a single submerged slipper. You chuckle softly. Not today, old ghost. The child calls out from a balcony above, waving a bamboo dragonfly in circles. You wave back. He grins. The canal bends west now, toward a low bridge with railings that serve more as decoration than safety. You cross it anyway, gripping the edges of your buckets like handrails. One tilt too far, and you're offering an unwanted gift to the fish. At the center of the bridge, you pause. From here, you can see 3 districts at once. The merchant quarter, rising neat and sharp. The entertainer's ward, drowsy under parasols and fluttering curtains. And the temple hill in the distance, where incense smoke climbs into the sky like a ghost with nothing left to say. You wonder which side of the city you belong to. Certainly not the temples, though you sometimes leave coins there, just in case. Not the entertainers, though you've heard enough secrets from behind their screens. And not the merchants. They'd rather pretend you didn't exist. Maybe the canal is the only place that really holds your shape. Always moving, always collecting, always carrying things no one else wants to see. A soft plop pulls your attention downward. Another object in the water. A peach pit bobbing gently. Then a twig. Then, something you can't identify. That's not two. The water smells stronger here. Not bad exactly. Just dense. Like old stew. You take a longer path through this district, partly because the bridges offer moments to rest. Then, partly because you like the way the water reflects the world in soft ripples. It makes even this job look beautiful, if you squint. You pass a woman pouring tea over her doorstep. A custom said to bring fortune. You doubt it works, but you nod politely. Just ahead, 2 stray dogs wrestle for a piece of fish bone near a pile of discarded baskets. One wins. The other sulks and follows you for half a block, sniffing hopefully at your buckets. He's disappointed, and clearly not a farmer. There's a collection point near a canal shrine, a spot most collectors avoid. Superstition, mostly. Something about the water spirit disliking waste. But you don't mind. The shrine is old, overgrown with ivy, but someone keeps leaving tiny rice balls there. You think it might be the old lady from the dye shop. You set your buckets down nearby and stretch. One of the few upsides of this route is the breeze off the canal. It's not clean, not really, but it moves. Then movement, even when it stinks, is still release. Once, a neighbor swore they saw a ghost drifting along this path, carried down her knees, barefoot, holding a broken cone. You believe them, not because you saw her, but because these alleys feel old enough to remember griefs. You finish your collection near a small noodle stall. The owner's waste is always wrapped in mulberry paper. Fancy, but impractical. You empty it with care. He pays in soup sometimes. You like him. You stop, bowl in hand, leaning against a stone step. The steam rises. The soup tastes faintly of scallion and fish paste. It cuts the memory of the canal just enough. The owner nods toward your buckets. Still carrying the whole city. Huh. You shrug. Only the parts it wants to forget. He laughs, short and warm. You head back through the narrowest canal path, the water beside you still moving, lazy, bloated, silent. The pails are lighter now, but your day isn't done. The sun tilts westward now, and the rooftops bleed long shadows into the alleys. You've refilled your buckets at a collection point behind a small tenement building, one of those old ones with sliding doors that wheeze when they move, like the house itself is exhaling. This next route winds uphill, gently but steadily. You feel in your calves. The air is warmer here, and more still. Less canal breeze. More sweat. You pass a row of vegetable stalls shutting for the day. Their keepers waving flies away as they stack limp daikon and bruised eggplants back into crates. One old vendor gives you a tight smile and nods. Not out of kindness, but recognition. You've been here before. He knows your smell. He used to whisper jokes to you. Something about being the only man in Edo who works harder than a horse and smells worse than one. These days, he says less. Maybe he's tired. Maybe you're too. The street here curves in an almost polite arc around a cluster of persimmon trees. Small ones, their fruits still green and hard. You remember when you used to pluck them as a boy. You bite in too soon, always too soon, then the bitter dryness would coat your mouth like chalk. But you never learned. The alley here is narrow and dignified. The buildings are better kept. This is a richer neighborhood. It smells faintly of cedar and starch. People don't like to see you here. They don't say it out loud. But doors close faster when you pass. Curtains flutter shut like startled birds. Even the dogs don't bark. They just go silent. You used to get angry about it. Now you let it be. You're not here for conversation. You're here for what's behind the walls. One tenant has a system. Neatly wrapped bundles left under a red lacquered bench. Another leaves hers in a shallow well by the plum tree. You've learned them all by heart. Each household has its rhythm. You become part of it, like a ghost that visits only when it stinks too much to bear. Historians still argue whether sanitation in Edo's upper-class districts truly reflected better hygiene or just better concealment. You suspect the latter. Even the most elegant bucket stinks when you lift the lid. You pause by a narrow gate. This one always creaks. You nudge it open with your foot and duck inside. The garden is small but meticulous. Raked gravel, a single lantern stone, and 3 mossy stepping stones leading to the rear. That's where the bundle is. Wrapped in indigo-dyed cloth, perfumed with something citrusy today. You appreciate the effort, even if the scent doesn't last past the second bucket. As you collect, you catch movement from a window above. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, watches you. She doesn't flinch or hide. Just watches. You nod at her. She nods back. Solemn. Curious. Unafraid. That moment stays with you longer than it should. Back on the main path, your buckets feel heavier. Probably just the incline. You shift the yoke slightly, finding a better balance. A breeze picks up, carrying with it a hint of grilled eel from somewhere nearby. Your stomach grumbles. You ignore it. Later, you cross paths with another night soil collector. Older. His back is hunched like a question mark. You trade glances. No words. Just that silent brotherhood of the bucket bearers. He turns down a different path. His sandals slap the stone rhythmically. You wonder how long he's been doing this. You wonder how long you will. You reach a small bridge, wooden, narrow, with railings polished by decades of nervous hands. From here, the city opens up in layers. Tiled roofs like fish scales, laundry flapping in the sun, smoke curling up from clay chimneys, the occasional laughter echoing like a ghost from behind a closed shoji street. You stand there for a moment, buckets swaying gently. Then, footsteps. Behind you. You turn slightly. A boy, maybe 14, carrying a small bundle wrapped in hemp cloth. He stops beside you. "My mother said you'd come by," he says. You nod. "She said you don't miss a day, even when it rains." You shrug. "Even when it rains." He holds out the bundle. You take it without a word. He watches you slide it into one of the buckets. "Does it smell awful?" You smirk. "Worse on the way in than the way out." He chuckles. A thin, surprised sound. Then his face sobers again. "She says it's good luck. To be regular." You raise an eyebrow. "Good luck for who?" "For the crops," he says. You nod slowly. "Then let's hope the crops are grateful." He bows quickly, then runs back the way he came. You listen to the sound of his sandals disappearing into the city noise. The sun is low now. Everything looks gilded. Even the buckets catch a little of that warm light. And for a fleeting second, you imagine they're filled with gold instead of what they are. You keep walking. You still have 2 stops before you're done. A dog barks in the distance. Someone sings off-key. And behind it all, the city breathes. Always. The light has shifted again. That warm, late-afternoon gold has cooled into something more fragile. An indigo mush spreading across Edo's rooftops. You can feel in the breeze, too. The city exhales slower now, as people settle into their evening routines. Lighting lanterns, stirring soap pots, brushing tatami mats clean for sleep. But your shift isn't over yet. You follow a side street that veers past the public bathhouse. The Shinto stands like a solemn guardian of steam and soap, its wide eaves and lanterns glowing softly. A welcome beacon for the weary. You catch a faint whiff of pine-scented water drifting from the vents above Hinoki, most likely. The kind that clings to your skin hours after you leave. Not that you're invited in. You slow your pace as you pass. People line up outside the entrance, baskets in hand, towels folded neatly across shoulders. They chat quietly, faces shiny with anticipation. A little boy hops from one foot to the other, already halfway undressed in his excitement. An elderly man fans himself, eyes closed, basking in the promise of warm water and clean skin. And then they see you. A few polite nods. A few turnbacks. One woman tugs her child a little closer. Just enough to let you know, you don't quite belong here. You tried before. A few Shinto owners don't mind, especially in the poorer wards. But here, near the temple court, near the homes of minor officials and silk traders, they'd rather their water not mingle with someone who handles night soil. It's not hatred. Not exactly. More like a social pat on the head. Thank you for your service. Please don't touch anything. Historians still argue whether Edo's sanitation caste truly faced discrimination or if it was simply ritual separation. But you know the answer. You live it. Still, you nod to the man at the entrance. He pretends not to notice. You keep walking. Your next stop lies just past the bathhouse, a row of older buildings that lean into one another like gossiping neighbors. Their wooden beams are warped, some patched with mismatched planks. The cat curls on a windowsill, tail flicking lazily. You nod at her, too. This alley has its own smell: mildew, sandalwood, and distant broth. Not unpleasant, just human. You knock once at a side gate. A moment later, it creaks open. An old woman peers out, blind in one eye, but sharp in the other. She recognizes you instantly. "You're late," she rasps, though you're not. You bow slightly. "Apologies, Granny." She waves a dismissive hand. The bundle's round back. Same place. You step through the narrow corridor, flanked by paper screens that glow softly from within. You hear a radio humming, a low, warbling folk tune, then a shuffle of slippers across tatami. In the courtyard, you find the bundle, double-wrapped, tied with practiced hands. Neat, dignified. The old woman's pride lives even in her waist. You load it carefully. Wait, she calls. You turn. She's holding a small bundle of rice ball, still warm, wrapped in lotus leaves. For you. You hesitate. She click her tongue. Don't insult me. You accept it with both hands. Thank you. Eat it while it's warm. Even the stink can't spoil good rice. You nod, tucking it away. I'll save it for the bridge. For good-eye twinkles. That bridge still creaks in the middle, only when you're carrying something heavy. She smiles. Then it must sing like a bird when you pass. You leave her courtyard with lighter steps. Back on the alley path, shadows stretch long and blue. Lanterns blink awake in doorways. Crickets begin their chorus. You pause by a small shrine tucked between buildings barely larger than a cupboard. Its tiny Inari statue is chipped, but someone has left fresh rice and a sliver of dried fish on the offering plate. You whisper thanks, not just for the food, but for the job, for the rhythm, for the fact that today, like most days, you didn't spill anything. You adjust your yoke again and head for the city's edge. There's a final form road to follow. But first you find a favorite bench by the canal. It's more stone than wood now, worn smooth by decades of unremarkable sitters. You sit. You unwrap the rice ball. It's seasoned with something, maybe miso, maybe just salt and kindness. You eat slowly, watching the city shift from blue to black. A boat drifts past, its lanterns swaying gently. Someone's humming aboard, off-key but sincere. You take another bite. Even the smell on your hands can't ruin the taste. You glance at your buckets, still half full, but manageable. Just a bit more to go. You stand, stretch your shoulders, and listen. No footsteps, no voices, just the wind in the reeds, and the hush of evening settling over a city that never thanks you, but always needs you. The road narrows as the city yawns into night. You've done this route hundreds of times, but something about the air tonight feels different, cooler, quieter, like even the wind is holding its breath. The buckets at your sides sway gently. Their weight familiar now, as much a part of your posture as your spine. You take the long route on purpose. It winds past the market that's now asleep beneath its straw awnings, past the shuttered stalls where women used to shout over fish prices and fresh greens at sunrise, past the small theater with its painted panels of kabuki masks, their grins looking slightly eerie in the moonlight. But eventually, as always, your path curls toward a fork. To the left, the main road, the one lit by regular lanterns, patrolled by yawning watchmen and the occasional drunk samurai grumbling about lost sandals. To the right, the narrower lane, less traveled, unofficial, not forbidden exactly, just forgotten. You hesitate. It would cut 10 minutes off your walk. You'd avoid the temple slope and the broken plank bridge that always groans under the weight of your cart. But it's not really about time, is it? You take the right. The shortcut is dark. A few lanterns flicker, but most have long gone cold. Stone walls press in on either side. A rat scurries across the path in front of you. Then another. You lift your pails slightly off the ground as you step around a suspicious-looking puddle. And then, you hear it. A bell. Small, clear. Not from a temple or a shop. It's too delicate for that. You stop. Ahead, at the bend where the lane narrows to a squeeze, you see a shape. A cat, perfectly still, sitting in the center of the path. White fur. Pale eyes. Tail curled neatly around its feet. You say nothing. Just wait. The cat blinks slowly, and then it stands, turns, and disappears around the corner. Naturally, you follow. You pass under a crooked wooden arch, a forgotten torii, half eaten by moss. On the other side, the shrine, tucked between buildings, so closely it feels like it grew here by accident. The ground are barely larger than your sleeping mat, but it's all here. The stone basin, the weathered rope bell, the little wooden box for coins. And incense, still burning. You stand at the threshold, unsure. You've passed this way many times. You've never seen this shrine. Historians still debate whether Edo's alley shrines were functional or simply symbolic, a way for forgotten corners to claim a piece of the divine. But standing here, you don't feel like debating. You feel noticed. The cat is gone. In its place, A small wooden tag hangs from a nail on the shrine's side. It's blank, or almost blank. You squint. Scratched faintly into the surface is a single character. Mo. Emptiness. You know that word. It shows up in poems, in prayers, in the muttered philosophies of drunks after their third bowl of sake. But here, it feels like a reminder. You reach into your sleeve and find a sun coin. Smooth and unremarkable. You drop it into the box. It doesn't clink. It just settles. You don't ring the bell. You don't make a wish. You just breathe. A breeze picks up, cool, clean, carrying the scent of cedar and a hint of plum blossom, though it's not the season for it. You turn back to the past. The buckets are still with you. The smell too. But something in your chest has lightened. You follow the lane as it rejoins the wider road. A lantern flickers back to life ahead, as if you've re-entered the world. 2 blocks later, you reach your final stop. The farmer is waiting, half asleep beside his compost pit, rubbing his hands together against the chill. He nods as you arrive. No spills? He asks. None. He chuckles. You're better than most. He hands you a coin pouch, a little heavier than usual, for the extra load. You nod your thanks, too tired to offer anything clever. You empty your buckets. The pit burps a little as it swallows the contents. You don't look back. The walk home is uphill. It always feels longer, somehow. But tonight, you're not counting steps. You're just walking. The night wraps around you like a worn futon. Soft in places, stretchy in others. A lantern near your door hums gently as a moth taps its surface. You arrive, unlatch the gate, step inside. The familiar creak of floorboards. The smell of boiled tea and sandals. You set your bucket aside. You wash your hands. You sit, and for the first time in hours, you let your shoulders fall. Tomorrow, the city will stink again. But tonight, there is silence. The house is small, hardly more than 2 rooms and a slanted roof. But tonight it feels like a palace. You light the tiny oil lamp in the corner, its flame trembling just enough to remind you it's real. Shadows stretch long across the tatama floor as you peel off your outer robe, stiff with the faint crust of the night's work. Your hands are raw. You see it now, in the soft glow, red along the knuckles, the skin puckered from the bucket's ropes. But that's always the case. You keep a cloth near the basin, soaked in herbal rinse, and rub it gently over your fingers, watching the grime swirl down the drain like ink and water. The city is just beginning to stir. Far off, the sound of a rooster. Someone's clock to 4 clocks were a thing. You hear shutters sliding open, a door creaking, the first footsteps of someone starting their day. But not you. Your day is over. You drop onto the mat, your joints sign along with you. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor begins coughing, phlegmy and deep, the kind of cough that comes from years of smoke and winters without enough rice. You'd pity him, but honestly, you're too tired to form an opinion. Instead, you stare at the wooden beams above. One of them is warped, bent just slightly in the middle like it's frowning at you. You thought about fixing it, but then again, you've thought about a lot of things. Learning to write better, buying that charcoal stove you saw at the market, growing chrysanthemums in a pot by the window. Historians still argue whether people like you, laborers, cleaners, the so-called unclean caste, had time for dreams at all. But here you are. You dream anyway. Your stomach growls. You forgot to eat during the last run. There's leftover rice in the pot, and maybe a slice of pickled radish if the mice haven't found it. But you don't move. Not yet. Instead, you think about the alley, the one with the cat and shrine. You wonder if it'll be there tomorrow. You wonder if it was ever there at all. And then you chuckle, just a little. Maybe I hallucinated the whole thing. You murmur to the ceiling beam, who offers no response. Wouldn't be the strangest thing this week. The air begins to warm around you. The oil lamp dances lower, its pool of light shrinking with each flicker. Outside, the sky fades from ink to indigo, the stars dissolving one by one. A paperboy passes, his sandals slapping the stone with a rhythm that matches your heartbeat. You close your eyes. You think about the work, about the homes you've visited, each one a world unto itself. The merchant who always nods without speaking. The young wife who leaves sweet rice cakes by the door when no one's looking. The child who once asked you, very seriously, if you're a ghost. You think about the fields, about how your labor feeds them, how the rice grows greener where your route ends. You think about the way people speak of you without using your name. The way they fold their sleeves to their noses. The way their eyes slide past you, like you're part of the air. Invisible, but necessary. You sigh. You lie still. And in the silence, the city begins again without you. And now, as her eyes grow heavy and the final sounds of the city fade into the distance, you let yourself drift, slowly, gently, into stillness. The lamp has gone out. The room is quiet. Your breath settles into a rhythm that matches the slow turning of the world outside. Nothing urgent waits for you now. Not the clatter of buckets. Not the creak of wheels. Not the whispered stories beneath thin walls. Just the comfort of rest, long overdue and fully earned. Somewhere beyond your door, morning stretches its arms, inviting another day into being. But you're not part of that yet. Not now. Now there's only softness. The softness of a well-worn futon beneath your back. The softness of a thought left unfinished. The softness of a life lived humbly, with dignity stitched into every quiet motion. You're the unseen rhythm behind the harvest. The quiet footstep that keeps the city clean. The nameless caretaker of its invisible quarters. And though no poem will be written in your honor, the fields remember. The soil remembers. And perhaps that's enough. A breeze slips through a crack in the wall, brushing past your cheek like a sleeping cat's tail. You turn, just slightly, and let go of the last remaining thread of wakefulness. You don't need it now. Let the city carry on. You've done enough. You are enough. And as the light outside brightens, your world dims into the gentle dark of sleep, slow, silent, and full of peace.